A very good evening and welcome to The Bottom Line, a wrap of some of the top business news stories of the day. My name is Nzinga Kunta and we begin as usual with your number of the day. Today, that number is 48.4. That, according to the South African Journal of Economic and Management Sciences, is the score that South Africans on average have out of 100 when it comes to financial literacy. The researchers drew up an index and defined financial literacy as a composite of financial knowledge and financial capability, using a survey that looked at the attitudes of people towards, as well as the use of financial services. A score was determined for each respondent, and then that was used to compare differences between people in different parts of the country. So the national average, as I've said, is 48.4 on a scale that ranges between 0 and 100. Class, location and race still play a large role in determining financial literacy. Let's continue discussing financial literacy in South Africa. I'm joined by Koshiek Karan. He's the founder of BankerX and has previously worked as a vice president in investment banking, specializing in mergers and acquisitions at an international banking institution. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this evening. Talk to us about what financial literacy is and the importance of it.
So firstly, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to be here. Look, financial literacy essentially is empowerment, right? And let's face it, schools don't do a good enough job of empowering people to face the real world, right? Especially the older generation have been faced with learning things like the body parts of a locust. Now, I don't know about you, Nzinga, but I've never been to a bank where I've had to open an account and tell them head, thorax, abdomen, and all of a sudden, your bank account open. So something has to change. And there's a handful of people who understand finance, and there's a handful of people that don't. And the bigger the gap, that's where you have exploitation and manipulation. And you mentioned a couple of stats at the start of your segment, and I'll add to that. Looking at the TransUnion stats, 1 in 4 people in South Africa have experienced a COVID-19 scam. Quick maths, that's 25%, right? Now, when people lose jobs and they're desperate, initially, people don't take disproportionate risks. They want to hold on to as much capital as they can, and they want to make smart decisions. But what happens when time goes on? As you become increasingly desperate, that's when you start to take on more and more risk. And that's when you see WhatsApp gifting, up money, all of these scams coming through. And it's a global phenomenon. People, it's not unique to South Africa, albeit scammers love South Africa. We're an emerging market. People love pyramid schemes in South Africa. So in short, when you get an email from a Middle East prince saying, Nzinga, you have an inheritance of $3 million, please reply to this email, it's one of two things. It's either an email from the Taliban or it's a financial scam. And in either case, you don't want to be part of it.
All right. So there's a plethora of information available online, as you've spoken about, and there's also very few people that you've spoken about that have a deep understanding of investment, savings and the like. So how does someone who is not financially literate, who is intimidated perhaps by the amount of information they don't know who to trust in terms of information around these issues?
So here's the thing. Trust issues may not be good for a personal relationship, but when it comes to money, you've got to have trust issues, right? So the two things to look for is, number one, the accreditation and the track record. Is this person accredited? You're borrowing cash from them. Is this an authorized financial services provider? Yes or no? Secondly, how long has this person been doing this for? For instance, if someone learned how to trade Forex 3 weeks ago, and is suddenly selling you software, courses, algorithms to beat the market at guaranteed profits, that should be the first red flag. But ultimately, if you're unsure, ask. Go out, send an email to the FSP, send an email to a tweet, anything. Ask as many people as you can. Generally, if it's not legitimate, they don't want you speaking about it, right? They don't want you talking up. They don't want you having an opinion. So make as much noise as you can. I mean, lastly, just have common sense. Common sense is just not so common anymore.
Okay, when we speak about information and financial information and who gets to be the purveyor of that information, there's some people who are not financial advisors who online are giving out information on topics. There's also
Yeah.
influencers and the like who leverage trust that they have built up with their followers to sell products. So what's the line between gatekeeping and saying, no, you're not allowed to say this because you're not a financial advisor, and also making information more widely available?
That's a really good question, right? I think the first question you got to ask is this person paid to sell me this product, right? If you use this famous or infamous banking quote, which is a bank will give you an umbrella when the weather's good, and when it's rainy, they'll take it back, right? And that's exactly how all of these products work. So everyone on social media, their cats, their dogs, even their rats have Twitter accounts, and they're out there dishing out this advice. But the issue is these are big ticket purchases in Zynga. When you buy a house, you're stuck with this for 20 years, right? And if you make a bad decision because some influencer property, person tells you, please buy a house, you stuck with it for 20 years. So it goes back to what's the track record? Are they qualified to give you advice? Where does accountability lie? And just always be skeptical, always have trust issues. And if someone's trying to sell you something, take it with a pinch of salt.
Okay, so you've launched a platform that you've described as disruptive to try and solve economic problems like career development, literacy and access to capital. What led to this? And then also, how far do you want it to reach, understanding that there is also a digital divide in South Africa?
Yeah, okay, look, so we founded BankerX. It's live for 3 weeks now. And here's what inspired it and what's the catalyst. So in Zynga, nobody's born with this database of knowledge. And I've spent my entire career in investment banking. And it's taken me years to understand the importance of capital, building up networks, solving real tangible problems. And when you go out to the real world, you can make some pretty costly mistakes, right? I think to give you an example, the first car that I bought with my first paycheck was a Jaguar that was 10 years old. This Jaguar broke every 6 weeks like clockwork, right? It leaked oil so bad that I thought the Americans are going to invade my complex. I thought, that it was worse than the BP oil spill. Now, if I knew how and what to look for when buying a car, that would have helped. So that's what we want to do. We want to accelerate the learning for people that didn't have the opportunities to learn from it. They're hard mistakes. We don't want them to make it. And ultimately, we want to provide quality, independent, accessible information without any paywalls, right? And you use the word disruptive. And I think it's important because we disrupt it because we provide an integrated, holistic approach to career development, investment banking, personal finance, the entire spectrum of solutions, right? Ultimately, we're solving a problem, right? How far do we want to make this go? We want to get this as far as possible. Okay, in 3 weeks, I'm thinking stats. We've got 100,000 users now on the website, right? Cumulatively, we've got 20,000 people in the community across all our social networks. And ultimately, we as BankerX don't feel that we can trust or put it solely to government to fix social problems as it relates to financial education. Because if you do, in Zynga, without pulling my punches, I think we're all going to die poor, right? So it's up to us as individuals that have had this concrete experience in real world cases to pay it forward, to step up and to really make this tangible change. That's what's driven it.
So very briefly as we end off, if we move away from a situation where we don't have 30.1% unemployment in South Africa and we have a financially literate population that is mostly debt-free or only has good debt, what are the implications for South Africa's economic growth going forward?
Yeah, look, that's the crux of the question, right? And here's the thing. If we fix the financial aspect of people's lives, essentially it has a multiplier effect and a cascade effect, right? When your finances are in order, you can spend more time on relationships, you'll have better space emotionally, but more importantly, it buys you time, right? And at the risk of sounding morbid, we're all going to die. And nobody wants to die poor, number one. But number two, nobody wants to die without having spent their time on experiences and not worrying about money. Right? So ultimately, where we want to get to is a point where we can have open conversations about money. We can break the taboos down. We can help as many people as we can. And, there is no ceiling to how far this can travel.
Koshiek Karan, thanks so much for your time on SABC News, founder of BankerX, joining me via Zoom.